All right, welcome back. Welcome back to the BFR Podcast presented by Sports Mockery. My name is Dave, cover the Bears for SM. Joined by my good friend, Chicago Bears content creator, Ficky. And today, the Mike McCarthy Day, actually the news was just announced that his interview has been completed, and I bet they're on their way to dinner or something like that right now, unless they did it before, I doubt it. But yeah, a lot of stuff to kind of talk about, a lot of rumors, a lot of I don't even know what to call it. This coaching cycle is bizarre because you hear one thing about Ben Johnson, you hear another thing about Mike McCarthy, which has really gained steam since the Cowboys let him go. So there's a lot to get to. Of course, we have a lot of questions to get to as well. So, Ficky, before we hop into it all, how you doing, man?
Man, I'm doing good. I mean, it's funny because I think about will this team ever have just like a normal or kind of slow off season? Not the case with this team. Honestly, at one point, we hope we're not talking about any of this in the month of January. But here we are again, 3 years later, repeating the process. But I will say, I do feel better. I know some people have some very varying opinions, but I actually feel a little bit more confident about how they're approaching it this offseason. And it might be delusion, but I feel more confident about the process and the candidates they're looking at this go around versus Ryan Poles only looking at 3 candidates, or they had Bill Polian, right, running the show, got it down to 3 candidates. Ryan Poles said, hey, I'm good with these 3. And then he picked, obviously, as we know, Matt Eberflus. So to say all that, I'm doing good because I'm slightly optimistic about the way that this team is going, at least from what we've heard. But how about you? I know you're not feeling so great from the health side right now.
Don't feel too well, but we're making it through. The Bears have caused me even more of a headache, though. I mean, the amount of interviews we're up to now, I think they've done 19? 11.
They're 19 they requested, and they've done 11, yeah.
Yeah, 20, I thought. If they're
20,
counting
it might be
not Morgan Freeman.
Marcus.
Marcus Freeman, Notre Dame. So, I mean.
Look, at this point, maybe Morgan Freeman will be on the list. They just keep adding names and names and names at this point.
Leader of men, right? That's what they're looking for.
For sure.
That's hilarious. No, I think they are giving me quite the headache. I think this coaching cycle is so unique. I mean, I want it to be over, but this thing is going to last a couple more weeks at the very least, especially depending on how the Lions fare in the playoffs. They could go to they could go to the Super Bowl, and we might not. I mean, those two, I guess Aaron Glenn and Ben Johnson are more likely to get head coaching roles. At least that was reported throughout the national media, which is kind of crazy. You got to feel for Lions and Dan Campbell because they're getting picked apart. That's why you kind of want to hope to get an offensive guy with Caleb this coaching cycle and not have to worry about losing your offensive coordinator if success does, find its way to Chicago, which I don't know if that's going to happen, but that's the goal.
That's the plan,
so,
right? Yeah, that's
the plan. And but yeah, like I said, I'm feeling all right. I wish this thing was over, but we're really probably in the middle of it, at least right now. Mike McCarthy's the hot topic. I kind of want to start there. Of course, Jack is not going to be here. I see a couple comments in the chat. He's actually at baseball practice. This man is trying out for the Cubs. No,
they need it. They need it.
No, he's at baseball practice. I think it's just what is it? Just a softball league that he's in or something like that.
Yeah.
And so he won't be here with us tonight. He'll be back. I think we have a Saturday special episode, Saturday morning, and he should be there.
Actually,
for that.
Let's tell him the real reason Jack's not here. He's trying to recover from his Sears account basically getting ripped to shreds this past week. So his burner account being taken down on Twitter. So
rip. That was quite the downfall.
For sure. Very quick. So,
but he amassed like 15,000 followers.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. And if you're not, poor Jack. If you're not familiar with Twitter or X, it's just the Bears account that has been, I guess you could say, right on a few things, but also wrong on quite a few. And then the walking joke on this show is that it is Jack that is behind that burner account, which would honestly.
Hey, we haven't seen him. We haven't seen him in the same room. So at this point, it might, with some of his takes, look, it sounds like erroneous Jack to me. So for sure. So McCarthy though. Yeah. Let's talk about that.
Yeah. I want to ask you this. How long until Schefter tweets that the Bears are working a multi-year contract? with him.
Can I start with
Seriously,
this?
do you think like what? Yeah, I want to hear what you want to say.
Yeah, no, look. I talked about it on our tier list show last week, right? That McCarthy isn't the sexiest pick, but that man took Dallas, and that offense was one of the high-powering offenses, right? He also was the play caller for that, and he has been throughout his 17 years, right? Even going all the way back to Packers when he was head coach there with Brett and Aaron Rodgers. The man knows how to win games. In the 3 seasons that he was there, if you take away this year, obviously Dak was injured, so it's not going to be a great year no matter
up
what.
And down.
He got 3 12-win seasons, I think, in his 4 years there.
Straight, 3 years straight.
12-5. Like, look, I know everyone wants Ben Johnson. We want Ben Johnson. That would be fantastic. But if you're telling me our second option is Mike McCarthy, 17 years of basically a winning resume, right? I'm going to take that. With the risk with Ben Johnson is that he's 0-0 as a head coach. Mike McCarthy is like 179 and like 100 or something like that, whatever, 120 or something like that. So a lot more data points for you to feel confident about the way he's going. Now, the downfall of Mike McCarthy is that he hasn't won the big game in a long time, right? The last time he did was with the Packers, with Aaron Rodgers, his only Super Bowl. And with Dallas, they won 12 games 3 times in a row, but really didn't get past the first round, if I remember correctly. So he gets to the dance, but doesn't move past it. I'm so desperate at this point to have something that is stable, that if you were to tell me right now in the next 4 years, 3 out of 4 of the years, the Bears win 12 games, get Mike McCarthy, the head coach of this team, immediately. Does that mean Ben Johnson couldn't do the same or better? Could be. But there's way more guesswork over there. Again, still want Ben Johnson because of his offensive mind. But that stability we have not had since Lovie Smith. And if you look at the criteria of like what we're looking for in a head coach, and the same criteria Caleb, which we'll get to, was looking for on his St. Brown's podcast, leader of men, he definitely checks it off. You can't be a coach of 17 years and not be able to lead a team and bring in good assistants. Offensive minded, he's definitely that. And his offenses are always some of the top 10, right, in that area, right? They're always good offenses. So again, long rant here, but to say all of that, I think there's a lot of discourse right now that's like, oh, Mike McCarthy, that would suck. That is so Bears. No, that's actually quite the opposite. An offensive-minded coach who has a pedigree, you know what I mean, of winning culture, the Bears have never had that. So maybe Mike Ditka way back, but their offense was dynamic, not from passing and things like that. And they were known for their defense back then. So again, I say all that to be like, if that ends up being our second option, or because of the reports, which I'll ask you about here, you hear it just dropped. Rappaport was saying how, things are really heating up with the Raiders, right? With Ben Johnson. If we end up being, not the number one option for Ben Johnson, this is not a horrible option B at all. Safe pick, sure, but that safe pick would still have one of the best records coming in as a head coach for the Chicago Bears. And I'll leave you with this one last stat. Mike McCarthy is 11-11 in the playoffs, right? That's 11 wins. 11 playoff wins in his 17 years, which is fantastic. That's an average of almost one every other year. That's great. When do you think the last time, well, if you were to take 11 playoffs, like if you were to go back 11 playoff wins for the Bears, what decade do you think that is in? What decade are we in?
I don't even know. I know it's a long time.
1940s. Mike McCarthy has done that in 17 years with 2 teams. That should say it right there. I think people are getting very they're not excited.
But at the same time, devil's advocate, Ficky, Aaron Rodgers.
That's
big
true.
bulk of that.
Got to have a good quarterback. Dak Prescott.
I don't even know did he win any playoff games in Dallas? I don't think he did.
I don't think he did.
Because last year they got bounced by Green Bay. That's been like the issue with him is they can't ever win in the playoffs, which is for me, I hear talk about, if they hire Mike McCarthy, no head coach has ever won a Super Bowl, I guess, with like a second team.
Yeah, I saw that too.
Something along those lines, which is, if that's your argument for not hiring him, it makes me laugh because I'm like, we just want to win. Like, can we just win I don't even care about a Super Bowl right now. Just give me like a successful, above 500, give me 12 wins even. Like, let's have some success and then start thinking about making a playoff run, Right now, we just need stability because we don't even have a head coach. We don't have anything right now except for, potentially a franchise quarterback and, some good players that are surrounding him. But Mike McCarthy, I want to go through these stats because there was a comparison with him and Mike Tomlin, because you're talking about, you brought up his 11-11 playoff record. Mike Tomlin's 8-11. They both coached 18 seasons. Mike McCarthy has 12 playoff appearances. So does Mike Tomlin. McCarthy has 8 division titles. Tomlin has 7. I think they both have 1 Super Bowl. So for me, it's kind of crazy. There's talk about, McCarthy needs to get Mike Tomlin's publicist. And I think also you got to remember the falling out between McCarthy and Rodgers. It was kind of ugly, right? There was a huge, I think, ESPN article a few years back that came out that really, it was kind of ugly. You hate to see that, but for Tomlin, he's been with Pittsburgh for how many? 18 plus years? Something like that. Yeah,
he's been there the whole time. Yeah.
So maybe that's why he gets the benefit of the doubt here. With McCarthy, he has had success with Dak, and of course he had the benefit of Aaron Rodgers as well. But Tomlin had Roethlisberger, and since then it's kind of been, he's been above 500, but they haven't really done much of it, right? They get bounced again in the playoffs this year after making it with Russell Wilson at the helm. So I think it is interesting. Mike McCarthy, when we released that tier list, which if you want to go back to last week's episode, it's a really good one. We did a tier list of all the head coaching candidates and also possible trade targets for the Bears. And it was really fun to do. But we did get some heat. Mike McCarthy led the elite tier higher. And a lot of people were really upset about that. But now you can see here, the Bears are making him a priority. They flew him out in private jet. Apparently it was his request, but the Bears still did it. Thank God. It's about time they act like
roll out the red carpet. Like, what are we doing here? They shouldn't be I'm sorry. The potential head coach of a multi-million-dollar company should not be flying in a seat next to me. I'm sorry. They shouldn't even be on the same plane. Okay. Yeah. That is not how you want. That's not how you wine and dine someone. I would, if I was on the other side and I'm going to a company and I'm like well-renowned, let's say I'm a C-suite, and they do something like that, I'm like, yo, like what are you doing here? You want to obviously go over the top, and it's because everyone else is. So when you see that everyone else is whining and dining them like that, and you're not getting that same treatment, whether that's fair or not, right? Whether they should be whining and dining these guys, that's a different discussion. But the other people are doing it. So either you got to keep up with the Joneses or you're going to get left behind. And the fact that the report came out that they weren't doing that for potential hires is mind-boggling. And that goes back to, we talked about this a while ago, right? The McCaskies are cheap. When it comes to their net worth of like fluid, actual cash in hand, they don't have much because their business is literally the Chicago Bears. That is it. They don't come from other industries. They're not like the Waltons who own Walmart, that own the Broncos now, right? They're not like Jerry Jones who came from oil money in Texas that now bought a team. No, they are one of the franchise founding NFL teams where that money was George Halas literally being a big proponent of starting the NFL. So I saw Brad Spielberg, I think you saw us too, Dave, talk about like, hey, one of the biggest deciding factors of Ben Johnson might just be the check, right? How big that check is. And if you're comparing, comparing the McCaskey money to Mark Davis money, who's the owner of the Raiders, not even close. So I say
he is kind of strapped. I don't know how strapped, because they're paying like 4 head coaches now and 2 GMs that are not with the team. You got the John Gruden settlement, which we don't know how much that is. I'm not saying that's going to negate anything, and then you got Brady, who owns 5%, and which we can get into his tampering later, but that's kind of crazy.
Deflate
I don't know.
What is this? What is this?
Yeah. But yeah, no, I agree. There is a difference in the money. The Bears have always been kind of cheap, but they did pay, I think, Eberflus, what, $8 million a year is reported, something along those lines.
It was their biggest head coaching contract. We don't know the years, but it was money.
I guarantee you, Mike McCarthy is going to cost more than $8 million a year, because I think that was the issue with the Cowboys.
Yeah,
the Cowboys wanted to give him 1 to 2 years. McCarthy wants a longer deal. I bet he gets anywhere between 4 to 5 years. Flus got 5. As he should.
That someone of that resume deserves 5 years. They give out 4-year deals to no names, right? That's just kind of like the standard for the NFL now for coaches. They want 4 full years. Now, they may not make it through 4, but that's kind of what they want to start at. McCarthy deserves 5. I wouldn't even be mad about that. What does he have to prove? Obviously, he has to come in here and win, but when you're looking at his resume, the dude one of the most winning active right now head coaches in the league. So I would not be upset with that. We do have a good question here from Brady here on Twitter. Said, loving the pod. Thank you, Brady. Appreciate that. He said, but doesn't it scare you guys that we echoed these same statements years ago when we got John Fox? It felt like a safe hire and it crashed out and burned. It's a fair question. I'm pretty sure McCarthy has a better resume than John Fox and a longer resume. So, and I think John Fox was defensive minded as well. Not that determines if a coach is great or not, but based off what we're aligning for with this team, I think McCarthy checks more of the boxes than John Fox does. So I'm not concerned as much. And also, John Fox, I think when he did take the Broncos to the Super Bowl, that was Peyton Manning when he was like beat up and whatnot, could barely throw a football. But that team won basically because of Von Miller and whatnot. So I'm not as concerned because I think McCarthy has shown more in his coaching tenure, and it's on the offensive side of the ball, which aligns with our young, hopefully.
Yeah, I think the correlation there is more so just they're old and they're established, and it's a safe pick, right? It's safer than what you would go with Ben Johnson, which we'll get into, but with Johnson, the ceiling is high, but the floor it could be so low. I mean, realistically, I don't think this is going to happen, but it is a possibility. If he could be hired here, Jacksonville, the Raiders, where they could fire him after a year if it gets to that bad, right? Say he's just not cut out for it. Players know it, sniff it out right away, start losing games, lose the locker room. You could see it happening. Maybe unlikely in year 1, but definitely year 2. And so that's a very ugly floor. McCarthy has shown and he's proven that no matter where he goes, he stays for a little bit, and he does win. He does win. I mean, we saw in Green Bay, which I think it's funny enough that Caleb Williams, who his favorite quarterback to watch, happened to be Aaron Rodgers, and who was coaching on the sidelines? Whose offense was that? It was Mike McCarthy and Aaron Rodgers, and they did that thing for quite a long time, and Bears fans know that very well. So I think that's kind of a cool connection. I don't know how strong it is, but it is fair to say, that's what Caleb's comfortable with. We'll see if I think I'm leaning towards McCarthy right now, just because of all the steam that is kind of picking up right now. But yeah, one thing I want to talk about with the Raiders.
Wait a second, before we move to that, there was also one. I mean, this guy's a piece of shit. I want to preface this, and I'm fine saying that.
Who?
But we're about to mention it from the Packers, not Rodgers, but Brett Favre. Right. He had talked about if you want someone who can help mentor and develop a young quarterback, Mike McCarthy is your guy. When he's literally talking about the Bears, though, in this situation. And that's true. Let's be real. Mike McCarthy was there from the beginning of Aaron Rodgers. Right. And that's not taking anything away from Aaron Rodgers, but we've seen a lot of talented quarterbacks not get the development they need. Right. And not get to their full potential. That was not the case with Aaron Rodgers. And you have to give some credit to Mike McCarthy for that. Okay. So I see these comments saying like, well, he had Dak, he had Aaron Rodgers. All of these great offensive minded coaches typically have a good quarterback that goes with them. That's why their offense is good. So you look at Shanahan. Shanahan came on the map because he took a team to the Super Bowl as an offensive coordinator. Who was his quarterback? Matt Ryan. He won MVP that year. That helped his career. Sean McVay, when he went to the Super Bowl and won, who did he have? Future Hall of Fame quarterback Matthew Stafford, right? These are not surprises that these really smart offensive-minded guys have a really good quarterback. Even if you look at Ben Johnson right now, Jared Goff, before he got there, kind of ups and downs, but went to the Super Bowl. If you look at him now, he's been in MVP conversations for 2 years straight now, has a great quarterback.
That man just went from Sean McVay to Ben Johnson. Arguably, crazy, Sean McVay being the best head coach in the NFL right now. And then you have Ben Johnson, the hottest head coaching candidate. And obviously a genius on the offensive side.
Yeah, it takes that's a great point because it takes two, right? Your offensive coordinator has to know what they're doing, or your offensive-minded head coach, and your player has got to be at least somewhat good so their floor is high enough, right? So I'm not concerned that he had Dak Prescott and looked great and he went 12-5. Good. That's what you're supposed to do with these quarterbacks. You're hoping he can bring some of that, Mike McCarthy, bring some of that same offensive game plan, which I think he could. 17 years, you got plenty of experience. And then the mentorship or the development aspect, which is so important, especially here in Chicago, because we've had okay quarterbacks, some that are, better prospects like a Fields, and we saw he didn't get the development he needed. So I say all of that to be like, I don't think it needs to be as doom and gloom with McCarthy, even though we all agree. I think the consensus for most people is that Ben Johnson is the guy. Well, go ahead.
I was just say, I think it's, if the Bears are wanting a 100% home run PR win, and to appease the fan base and to, I guess, make the hype higher, right, would be Ben Johnson. If you can land him, he's undoubtedly the number one target. Whether that means he's going to be the best is to be seen. We don't know, but he's the hottest and the biggest target in this coaching cycle, and by a far margin. But with Mike McCarthy coming available, it kind of just it's made things kind of go awry. And then, of course, you have Pete Carroll in the background as well. I know he's taken interviews elsewhere, but Mike McCarthy is linked to the Saints. I think his agent, Mike McCarthy's agent, somehow has ties to New Orleans. I'm not exactly sure where this was.
That makes sense.
I'm not going to try and find it. All I'm saying is McCarthy has another interview lined up with the Saints
tomorrow.
I'm sure he might get. Yep. And then the Bears are actually interviewing Brian Flores on Saturday. That would be the 13th interview. But I think McCarthy and Ben Johnson they're just too drastic differences in my opinion, just because you have one that's young, hasn't done it before. He's 0-0. And you got McCarthy, who's experienced a lot of success, but also comes with a lot of, I guess, not baggage, but just not the same hype that would be with Ben Johnson. But at the same time, I see a lot of people, a lot of fans actually would be, I guess, excited about it because of you bring in a professional. You bring in a guy like we had Matt Eberflus, right? And we'll get to Caleb Williams.
I remember,
and, his push for Ben Johnson, at least that's what it felt like in his interview with the St. Brown podcast with St. Brown Brothers. But for me, Mike McCarthy, it's just, I don't know, lost my train of thought. I don't know. What was I saying, Ficky?
No, I mean, you're saying that he has it. The Bears fans are on board because this is a guy like we talked about. He's got a lot of experience, and it makes sense. You all you had to say were those two words before, and that should put everything in perspective. Yeah. Matt Eberflus. Are you telling me that the difference from Matt Eberflus to Mike McCarthy isn't night and day?
Well,
absolutely.
In that interview, what we're going to get to, that's why, like I said, this Bears coaching search is giving me a headache. All these dang names, but Matt Eberflus and his time management, clock management, end of game scenarios is something that Caleb Williams kind of brought up in that interview. And we're going to get to it and go through the quotes here. But that was a professional. What's the word? Professional diss, if I've ever seen one, because you could feel everything he was kind of notating about what he wants in the next head coach. You could be like, yeah, Flus wasn't that at either. All. And it is quite funny that Caleb kind of went about that way. Again, in a very professional way, I would say. So I don't know. I think the PR move would be Ben Johnson. I get it. But at the same time, with Caleb Williams wanting, pushing for Ben Johnson in that St. Brown podcast, at least an offensive mind, but it felt like, and like I said, we'll get to it in a minute. But with Ben Johnson and the Raiders is what I want to get to here, because that one is picking up steam too. But I almost call BS, because the only thing that they can offer, and money talks, but it is money, like you said, Ficky. And for me, for Ben Johnson, who has been, I think he's interviewed the last 2 coaching cycles.
Yeah.
And he's turned down Washington last year. He's turned down Chicago last year, I think, as well, where he didn't want to interview. So not Chicago. Who did he turn down? Was it Tennessee at one point?
Yeah, he turned on a couple. He didn't turn on Chicago
Or Carolina. I'm not sure. Either way, but to turn everything down and not to,
it was Carolina. It was
Carolina. But to not go through and take any of those positions, Washington being the interesting one, but then to go with the Las Vegas Raiders is quite crazy, because then you'd be passing up in Chicago as well, because I'm not saying the Bears are interested, obviously, but to pass everything up, and yeah, I get the Tom Brady hype, but it's like he has 5% ownership. He's cool and all, but like, what is he really gonna do? So outside of just, I guess, use his influence. Maybe.
Which is a big influence, but there's let's look at the pros. If we're going to do pros and cons for both organizations, pros for the Raiders, and add in anything you feel like I missed. Pros for the Raiders right now is they fired their GM, right, and head coach. So there's a clean slate there, right? So Ben Johnson can come over, bring his GM that he prefers, probably the assistant GM from the Lions, and they can start fresh there. That's a pro. Second pro, even though they are strapped for cash because they're paying out so many people because they fire people, probably even more than the Bears do, I still think they might have a little bit more money to throw out there. Okay, so you have that. Those are the two, in my opinion. Well, I guess the third is the influence of Tom Brady. I'm sorry. When you have the GOAT, there is like the buy-in. You can believe it because this is one of
the front office. People. I think they have the upper hand in the front office and ownership. But I think so.
Yeah, so let's say
not that the Raiders are like beautiful or perfect. I mean, they are pretty. Right. They could be pretty shitty too.
So. Here are I agree. Those spot on. Great ad there. So you got those 3 pros. Now, if we're looking at the cons of the Raiders, you don't have a quarterback. You don't. That's one. But not only do you not have a quarterback, you don't have a top tier pick to get such quarterback.
Pick
6. Now, if Shedeur falls, because I think that's how the mocks are kind of going right now. Maybe you have that chance.
But is he a franchise guy? Because this quarterback class is question marks.
Yes, a lot more question marks.
Because look at last
question
year.
Marks.
You could say everyone hit almost.
For how they performed in their rookie year, absolutely.
Dude, it could go down as one of the best QB draft classes in a very long time.
We'll have to see what they do next year. Yeah.
And see what JJ McCarthy turns out to be too.
Correct.
But yeah, keep going.
But yes, you make a good point. You make a great point. But I think consensus, draft analysts would say this so far, right? Not a strong quarterback class. So even if you're going to draft one, you don't have your Caleb Williams, you don't have your Jaden Daniels of the draft, you don't have your super young guys like Drake May and JJ McCarthy, right? Cam Ward's been in the league for like 4 years. I mean, in NCAA dog, right? And the Shedeur Sanders is, I think, 22, 23. But anyways, you get the
Caleb's
point there.
22.
So, exactly. So that should tell you everything you need to know right there. So you have that's the cons on that aspect. Now, 3 pros, 2 cons, I think major ones. And again, add in any cons you also think aligns with this. I'd say where there's a fair split, or maybe even more of a con for the Raiders, is the division. Okay. Now, we all know the NFC North was the best division in NFL history, right? That's not bound to repeat again, right? You don't have something
regarding
happen
wins.
Right. You're not gonna have 3 teams get 11 plus wins again. It's only happened once. It's gonna be very hard to replicate that. Okay. But as you know, you have the Lions, Ben Johnson's a part of. You have the Vikings, Kevin O'Connell and Sam Darnold. And then you have the Packers with Jordan Love and obviously Matt LaFleur. But on the other side, right, you have 3 dominant coaches there, right, including Dan Campbell. But when you look at the AFC West, you have the Raiders, which is one of obviously the candidate here. You then have Harbaugh and the LA Chargers with
include the quarterback, because that's crazy too.
No, that's Harbaugh and Herbert. Including Herbert, right? Then you have Broncos, who have Bo Nix, who's been playing well, and talk about established, well-renowned coach, winning coach, old Sean Payton, offensive minded as well. You've seen that work out, by the way. It can work. That's a great example right there. That can work. And then your third option, I don't know if you guys ever heard of these two, but a guy named Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes. You know the team that's won the past 2 and looking for a 3-peat. That's your division. So there might be more wins on our side, but all 3 of those teams made the playoffs. And one of them is the best team in the past. So to go into that division without a quarterback, that's a huge risk. The question, which we don't know, is the priorities from Ben Johnson's perspective. When he's ranking those, is money number 1? If money's number 1, it might be the Raiders, right? If he wants a challenge or to go find his own guy, then it's probably the Raiders, right? If it's division, I can see either or. But if he's like, oh, I want to go somewhere that already has weapons and a quarterback, that's 100% the Bears. We have definitely a better roster set in place to start winning games early. But what we don't have is an empty spot for the GM. Ryan Poles will be here. He's probably already extended. So that's kind of your downfall there. Sorry, didn't mean to cut you off there. But that's kind of like the full landscape. There's a lot of details we don't know and we'll never know, obviously. But how does he weigh those options out? That's what's going to determine which way he goes, in my opinion.
Yeah. And then the NFC North is going to regress. I mean, you got the Lions that should take a step back just because they're going to lose 2 of the best coaches on their staff. Ben Johnson, offensive coordinator, Aaron Glenn, defensive coordinator. Then you got the Vikings. I think they're very interesting, but they have one of the older rosters in the league. They have a lot of pending free agents. You got J.J. McCarthy coming as well.
They have 3 draft picks too. They have a first
and they're
2
limited. Yeah, and that's because of, I think, the Dallas Turner trade up last year. So I'm not sure. I'm not going to say they likely will regress a little bit. It just happens. It's a year-to-year league, honestly, unless you're like some of the top teams with, an elite quarterback. But then you got the Packers, which are interesting too. You saw it this year where they struggled. They did make the playoffs, but then got bounced. So I think there's just going to be regression, and hopefully the Bears can't really regress too much more. You would think that they would be better next year.
No. Yeah, I hope so. Or we're going to be having a hard time doing these podcasts next year if that's the case.
Oh, man, you tell me we only win 4 more games.
Oh my God. Yeah. No, in Bears fashion note, a little hypothetical here. What would happen is Bears would get Ben Johnson. There'd be all this hype. It'd be crazy. And the team would shit the bed next year. That's what it would be. That's
well,
like
I'll
Bears
be honest.
fashion.
I won't be the one of them that buys into the hype. I will be excited. I'll be watching, but going into next year, even in training camp, even if I see or hear that things look better, until it's win.
Week 1. Yep.
Yeah. Not even week 1 because we won last year against Tennessee.
That is true.
And we started out 4-2. I'm going to wait to the end of at least until we're maybe in the playoffs or fighting for the playoffs at the end of the year before I'm, fully bought in. But I'm excited about the season. I always am. Excited about the offseason as well. There's a lot to kind of look forward to with the draft and free agency. But yeah, with this rumor stuff picking up, it looks like it is between Ben Johnson and Mike McCarthy. I will say this. I want to hear what you think. The Bears have interviewed, albeit virtual over Zoom, with Ben Johnson. Mm-hmm. They have to bring him. They have to fly him in, right, and interview him in person, right, before they make this decision with Mike McCarthy. But could you see it? How confident are you that they don't pull the trigger and get this thing done?
Well, first off, before they can even pull the trigger on any coach, they still have to bring in one more minority coach as well.
That can be done quick.
True. As we saw with the Patriots, they knocked it out 2 in 1 day. But there is that. So we still have to wait on that because all they have is Ron Rivera right now. Yeah, all they have is Rivera. Yeah. And with that as well, with the Rooney Rule, you can't bring in any coaches in person if they're on a team that is still playing football games. So to say all that, yes.
So it says, I have the rule right here if I'm going to read it.
Feel free.
For the sake of clarity, and the following procedures: no person who is employed by another NFL club, irrespective of whether the candidate's employer club is still playing, may be interviewed for a head coach position virtually before January 7th or 8th, and in person January 20th. Interviews with employees of other clubs must be conducted virtually prior to the conclusion of the divisional playoff games on Sunday, January 19th. In-person interviews with candidates who are employed by other NFL clubs whose seasons have concluded cannot occur until January 20th, the day following the conclusion of the playoff or the divisional playoff game. So, yeah, they have unless they bring in, I guess what New England did, candidates that are not currently holding a job in the NFL, then they can get that thing over with. Which I don't know. How do you feel about the Rooney Rule?
In principle,
it's a little disgusting that how New England.
Yeah,
I think that's because in principle it's good, but it's like to see it bypassed like that is just.
Look, they're always. I will give credit for the NFL. Every year they kind of update it. Like, so last year it was not only minorities, you had to women fell into that, or part of the spectrum wherever they want to be at. So they're always improving it. But obviously these people are gonna. The Patriots didn't break a rule. Let's clarify there. They technically didn't do anything wrong, but it definitely looks very shady, especially when you look at how it went down. They brought in Byron Leftwich and Pep Hamilton, who the Bears interviewed for offensive coordinator.
In the same day, right?
Same day, knocked him out quickly, just out of nowhere. And these are both African-American.
Zoom calls, like it's work.
Yeah, got him in, boom, done. And then they hired Vrabel. Like, they made sure they crossed that off their checklist because they knew they're going to get Vrabel. So obviously you're always going to have some outlier cases where that happens. They just got to update the rule a little bit. But like you said, I think it's fair. We don't spend too much time on it. On principle, it makes sense, right? Give everyone an opportunity. Yeah. You should do that. That's fair. And then you can then make the decision based off the information you got from the interviews to take the best candidate, right? Totally fine with that. So that's all good. So Bears still have to comply with that. Also, how long can they wait? You know what I mean? Like, this is the weird thing about head coaches, right? Timing is so impeccable in these situations because, again, this isn't free agency where every team, as soon as the clock hits, was it like noon on that Tuesday? Everyone's got the same. Well, obviously, conversations go on weeks before in agents. We know how that back stuff is.
The right? Swift deal.
The Swift deal was done immediately, right? But in essence, everyone kind of has the same amount of time to, work out there and figure out like who they can get. That's not necessarily the case with these head coaches because there's demand from different areas, and due to how long the coaches or when the coaches come available because they're on playoff teams, some teams feel like they can't wait because they don't have much leverage, so they pull the trigger a little bit earlier, right? Luckily, the Bears, I think it's why also their list is so long, is because they haven't had a head coach for over a month and a half now. So they've had time to do their back end research, and they're like, look, we feel like these 20 people, compared if they just fired them at the end, maybe they only had a list of 8 because they didn't have time to do all that research in the back end. So to say all that is really the question. Do the Bears feel like they have enough leverage going into the offseason? We're not going into the offseason. We're now going into the playoffs to have the possibility of waiting till the first week of February for the Super Bowl to be over? Because there is a very high possibility that Detroit makes it to the Super Bowl. They are the number 1 seed for a reason in the NFC.
I hope they lose this weekend.
Well, of course,
God, would that make things less complex?
Oh, yes, it would. Also, we would love to see an NFC North division rival go down. So, absolutely. But if that doesn't happen, let's look at the Mike McCarthy situation. Mike McCarthy's down to really 2 teams that we've heard so far: Saints, Bears. Right now, I would say on paper, Mike McCarthy's probably first in line for the Bears. Okay, let's say Ben Johnson is second for the Bears. Okay. Do you wait that long to still end up second, right? Because that could happen to Ben Johnson. So you lose out on Ben Johnson, but because you waited so long to go for that and you put all your chips for Ben Johnson, does Mike McCarthy then go to the Saints and you lose out?
For me, I think it's interesting, but Mike McCarthy understands. I mean, he's the one that requested to fly private. He requested it be in person, right? And I believe, although the Saints are interesting, they don't compare
not even
to
close.
What the Bears have available for him. And I think he wants to coach the Bears. I think it's very, very clear. I think he wants to coach Caleb Williams. So I think he's willing to wait. I don't think he would make a decision until the Bears were 100% sure. And I think he would understand waiting for Ben Johnson. That's why I'm like, man, if we could just get lucky here, see the Lions lose this weekend, it would make things move at a way faster speed. And also, like you said, that means the Packers, Vikings, and the Lions all lost in their first playoff game, which would be honestly hilarious.
Wild.
It would be
wild. The first time in the division, they play They play the Rams? No, Rams won the division, so they're a lower seed. They play – who is the lowest seed? Oh, my gosh. Look that up while we answer this question from Thomas Whitty here, OG of the chat, said
Commanders
of the channel.
Oh, do we want to see Jaden Daniels win?
You know what?
Because then it would speed everything along.
Yes, I was going to say for Bears, for just selfish reasons, absolutely.
But God, Jaden Daniels going into Detroit.
Oh, we'll never hear the end of it. The Bears should have took him, right? Whatever. Okay, so Thomas Wade does have one question about the Rooney Rule, which we'll clarify here. He said, how many do they have to do with the Rooney Rule? Does Thomas Brown not count? So they need 2. Thomas Brown does not count because it has to be external candidates. Thomas Brown
also doesn't have to be in person?
Yes.
They did his over Zoom.
Yep. So these have to be, which is funny because he's literally in the building.
It's right down the road.
Yeah. So, he does not count mostly because he's internal. So, internal people, whether in person or not, do not count. So it's got to be external. But great question.
That's a good question.
But that is going to be an interesting matchup though for that playoffs. Oh, speaking of it though, before we move on, let's do our mid read real quick if you don't mind. Because I realize we're 40 minutes into the show. First off, you've been here for 40 minutes.
Finish up with.
Yeah, go ahead. Okay, I was gonna say since we're 40 minutes into the show, I didn't realize it. Off-season show, we just keep. There's always something to talk about. I will say the team gives us something to talk about. Not wins, but there's always discussions about this team. So I appreciate that, and we appreciate y'all who are here on a Wednesday evening to talk Bears. We really do appreciate it, especially in the off-season, right after the season we just went through. So first off, if you're here, please give a like on the video and subscribe if you haven't already. We really do appreciate that. We're on the road to 10,000 subscribers. The show's been growing crazy. You guys have been fantastic. And again, this is the BFR Podcast, the number one show for the fans by the fans. Or by the fans for the fans, excuse me. Because Dave and I are fans just like y'all. Same with Jack, diehard fans of this team. We feel the same pain you feel when they lose consistently and the same excitement that y'all feel when they win. So I know that doesn't happen much, but when they do, we definitely hold on to that. So again, thank you for joining the BFR Podcast, the number one show for the fans, by the fans. And if this is your first time, again, thank you so much. Please give a hashtag new face gang in the chat. We'll make sure to give you a shout out before the end of the show. Also, if you're a true OG in here, like I saw with Thomas Whitty in the comments and a bunch of you in the comments, please give a hashtag OG and we'll give you a shout out before the end of the show. Also, with that hashtag OG, let us know who you'd rather have, Mike McCarthy or Ben Johnson, and then give your reasoning why, and then we can go through those at the end. So we really do appreciate that. Again, spending your time here with us, we really do appreciate it. But if you really want to support us here and help this channel grow, it's free to like and subscribe. It really does help out the show. Also, though, if you want to help, another ways that you can help us out, it's getting cold right now. So if you want to stay warm, you can go to the BFRstore.com where we have hats, hoodies, beanies, shirts, everything your heart desires. I know it's freezing. This past week was cold as hell down here in Atlanta. So I know it's freezing up there in the Midwest, but if you want to stay warm, you want to support the boys here, go to the BFRstore.com. All the proceeds from the show, from the store, go right back into the show to help make this better, continue to make content and bring value to all of y'all, because that's what we're here for. Also talking about bringing value. If you want to join the ongoing community we have here, you can join our BFR Den on Patreon. We have monthly giveaways, private Zoom calls, and mailbag episodes. Actually just shipped out the monthly giveaway, a free hat to one of our members who won this past month. And we'll have our monthly giveaway coming up again for this month of January. So we have 2 tiers on there. We have our Hall of Fame tier, which is our big tier. That's $10 a month. And what you get with that is a private Zoom call with Dave, Jack, and I. And then you get all the things in the Rookie Grizzly tier. And in the Rookie Grizzly tier, it's $3 a month, just like a cup of coffee. Actually, less than a cup of coffee nowadays. And what you get with that is the monthly giveaways. You get also the access to our private Discord where we're active in there and we talk, and a bunch of other value. What we've discussed as well, I know there's a lot of Marvel Rival fans on there. So we're actually working on something about bringing some value of Marvel Rivals onto the Patreon as well. So TBD on that. But as Caleb talked about on his interview with the St. Browns pod, he's also a big Marvel Rivals guy, #1 game right now. So Hall of Fame quarterback confirmed. So we appreciate that from him. And then speaking of Hall of Fame, let's give a shout out to our Hall of Fame Patreon members. We do have Michael, who actually won the last monthly giveaway. So shout out to Michael there across the pond. And we have Gage. Appreciate y'all for being our Hall of Fame Grizzly members. And then a shout out to our Rookie Grizzly members. We have Alex, who's in the chat right now, and he's always lifting, I swear, when he's watching the show, but we appreciate that. Brian, Chris, Jason, and Eston, we appreciate your support. Again, you can go to the BFR Den on Patreon if you want to support us there. The BFR store if you want to get some fire merch and stay warm during this cold season. And of course, you can just like and subscribe. And then make sure you give your hashtag OG and New Face Gang in the chat. Also, we are sponsored by Sports Mockery, as Dave had talked about. So if you want to check out a bunch of Dave's articles, great ones on there, please go to Sports Mockery. We couldn't do anything without their support in this show. We appreciate them for being a sponsor basically from day one. So much love there. So please check out Sports Mockery. Not only do they have Bears content, they have all Chicago sports. So if you're a Bulls fan, Sox fan, Blackhawks fan, everything in between, you can go to sportsmockery.com and find out, great articles there. And then we're also sponsored by Green Gridiron, who makes quality helmets. Like, these are like same helmets that you would see in the NFL. They got all different types of the Bears ones. They got my favorite, which is the throwbacks they brought back like 2 years ago, like those orange stripes on them. And they also have the mini helmets. And they're actually not too expensive, like $50. It's not bad. Perfect for sitting like right back there with your like knickknacks and whatnot. I'm definitely buying a couple for next season. So, get in there. So if you want to go to the greengridiron.com and use the code BFR, you'll get a discount off your first order. So shout out to Green Gridiron for supporting the show. We appreciate them as a sponsor. Of course, shout out to Sports Mockery. And then finally, shout out to y'all, because it really is about y'all. We wouldn't do the show if y'all weren't here. Again, the BFR Podcast, the only show, and the number one show that is for the fans, by the fans. So much love. Let's get back to it.
Yeah, absolutely. And the link for the Green Gridiron is on our YouTube description. So if you want to check it out, of course, go ahead and do so. But we're going to finish up the last 15 minutes or so of the pod talking about Caleb Williams and his interview with Amon-Ra St. Brown, and then Equanimeous St. Brown, EQ, on the St. Brown podcast. So basically, there was a lot. First of all, you should go check it out on YouTube. It is very, very funny. You can see Caleb in a relaxed setting where he did not say at all, really, which I thought that was one of my biggest. I was like, wow. You can tell that when he is, I guess, during his pressers, it's just a completely different vibe, where he's actually, I guess,
a lot less pressure on the podcast. That is for sure.
Exactly. Yeah. Where you have to make sure you're not saying the right thing. But at the same time, he's in Chicago. So he knew this was going to be picked apart as well. And Amon-Ra St. Brown asked Caleb Williams if he could build his next head coach, what qualities the Bears quarterback wants. He went ahead and said strong-minded, a leader of men. I think that is a cool thing about what y'all got over there in Detroit. Amon-Ra St. Brown then followed up, said, do you feel like you want your coach to be offensive-minded? Williams, selfishly, I want an offensive-minded guy so I can build with him and be with that coach for the next 19, 17, 15 years. And so I can also learn and grow and things like that from him. And what he has seen and what he has gone through with maybe other QBs he has been around. So that is selfishly. But if we get an overall like grand scheme and is good with time management, good with the clock, good with helping control the game, just because it's a big factor, obviously. And in our game that we played the first time with y'all, which he's referring to the Detroit Lions game where that got Matt Eberflus fired on Thanksgiving or the day after on Black Friday. It was a big factor is being able to control the clock and then, helping find the right guys to win championships. I mean, that's the only goal that I have for my NFL career is to go win championships start with one. It is very interesting. But another thing is when he asked about, Ben Johnson, he essentially said, what's the word? He didn't say that he didn't come out and say that he wanted Ben Johnson. He was asked about it. He kind of gave a smirk, which if you watch the pod, you know what that smirk means. He wants Ben Johnson. Secondly, he said, if it's not Ben Johnson, it is what it is. And so if you're saying it is what it is, you're kind of complacent. You got to go with the flow, right? But from that interview, what I got, and Ficky, you can tell me if I'm wrong, is that he's number one. The number one guy for Caleb Williams is Ben Johnson. He also talked about the prank about the fans played on him, which he confirmed is true, which is honestly hilarious, and you can go check out it again. But do you believe that Caleb Williams wants Ben Johnson?
Yeah, why wouldn't you? We want Ben Johnson. You don't think that he doesn't want an offensive-minded coach for the past 3 years that's been dicing up even some of the best defenses in the league? He's played this team twice, and he's literally sitting on the bench seeing what this offense can do with Ben Johnson. Okay. So selfishly, from a quarterback, right? That's what you want. From a play caller, that's what you want. Now, what he doesn't know, he knows how he calls plays, because we all see that. We know how he calls plays. We see that on Sundays. We see the results of that. What we don't see is how he is in the locker room, right? We hear maybe how people talk about him, but what none of us know is how he leads an NFL roster. So Caleb kind of has some of the same information the fans do. He probably has a little bit more because he knows more about like the play designs and things like that, but in play schemes. But in essence, Caleb is liking the same exact shit that we're liking. This dude can call plays and knows how to run an offense. So when Ben Johnson gets here, that will not be the issue. The question is, will Ben Johnson end up being, funny enough, someone like a Mike McCarthy, right, that can lead and has an offensive minded, or will it be someone like Mike Tressman? Was it Mike? Mark? Jeez. Mark Tressman, yep, who could call up plays. He had a top 5 offense 2 of his 3 years, but could not lead a team worth shit, right? So the question is, what side of the spectrum are you getting? And none of us know that. So I'm not surprised, because if you take away the head coach, which none of us know, and you look at just what we do know, he excels. He is the best at what he does in that position. So selfishly, as a quarterback, that's exactly what you want. That's exactly what you want. Someone to come in here, someone new, young, fiery. You talked about that was one of his big things. We know Ben Johnson's fiery. You've seen him on the sidelines. So, I'm not surprised. He's just like us. And
he talked about the longevity too, right? Of getting an offensive minded head coach, who you don't have to change. That's the thing. With Mike McCarthy, yep, he's an offensive, I guess, minded coach, but at the same time, he's going to have to bring in an OC. He's going to have to bring in a DC, and that OC, if all things go well, is obviously going to get poached, just like we're seeing in Detroit right now. And that's where it's like, you hate to see that right now. If Caleb Williams establishes himself and gets really comfortable in the NFL, then maybe that, I guess, offensive coordinator change a couple years down the road, if there is success, even it'll still be a transition, but he'll be able to overcome it maybe hopefully quicker than what we've seen in the past with other quarterbacks around the league. So, which will be interesting to see with Jared Goff and what he looks like.
The good thing, for sure, the good thing about both of these candidates is that they both call plays, right? I'm assuming we would have to assume if Ben Johnson comes here and doesn't call plays, like, I'd rather have Mike McCarthy. Like, I'm just going to say it, right? Because the best quality of Ben Johnson, from what we know, is that he can scheme up masterful plays. Mike McCarthy, through his tenure, like I started in the beginning of the show, calls the plays. So it's like more like an Andy Reid situation. Andy Reid's had a couple OCs through there, including ex-coach Matt Nagy, like twice. Offensive coordinator left, became head coach for us, and came back, right? So there's the 2 coordinators there, and they still won, right? The Mike McCarthy would be the same thing. You would have OC in there probably for a couple years. If we start winning games, which is crazy to think about, our OC would be a top candidate for. So
I guess
it
is
like
a little bit better with McCarthy.
Yeah, because I think that's the big thing. That's why I feel so strong about McCarthy. Like, not above Ben Johnson, but I still feel good, is because it's not like he's just a head coach and now we have that revolving door all the time, right? He still is going to be the head honcho when it comes to the type of offenses you want to run. So that's good. But again,
I agree with Caleb, football guy. Because remember when he got fired by Green Bay, and like during COVID or something, like there was like a little story on him and his team. They basically built a building, and him and his staff, because he was preparing to get a head coaching job again, which ended up being Dallas. But wasn't it a story where he had those guys in the lab, basically prepping for what they were going to do if they were to land a role, the presentations, everything like that, basically just being ready, football mentally, firing on all cylinders. Am I crazy? Do you remember that?
No. That sounds right. But look, you're going to get that too, sure, with an established, I should look it up. He is an established head coach. So that's another thing we talked about, right? Dan Campbell said one of the most important things, we brought up so many times on the show, but like one of the most important things for a head coach is the staff you bring in, which makes sense when you're talking about like anyone in a leadership position. It's all about the people underneath you, how well, the good people you bring in. That's why Dan Campbell brought Ben Johnson, because they both worked, I think, they both coached in Florida, I think. I can't remember what NFL team, but they both, he had been around Ben Johnson enough that he brought him with him to Detroit. Mike McCarthy, 100%, if he becomes the head coach, there are going to be great candidates that want to come work with an established coach like Mike McCarthy. And that goes to the story you just said, where
his staff, yeah.
Mike McCarthy probably already has his, not saying Ben Johnson doesn't, but Mike McCarthy definitely has his staff up for his new head coaching job. And it might be a lot of people or some people from Dallas, right? Especially on the offensive side. So not too concerned about that at all. But going back to Caleb, like, yeah, I feel you on that. That's exactly what we all feel. That's what we all want. It makes sense. Will it happen? I have no idea. But that's why when I started the show, I said, like, I'm slightly weirdly optimistic, is because if we don't get option one, I can live with option two. Normally we go into this coaching search and I'm like, I have not heard anything about us getting option one. So let's go back 3 years, right? Harbaugh, when he came available, not 3 years, last year, Harbaugh became available. I kept saying, guys, I haven't heard any reports about Harbaugh to Chicago. That means the agent is not feeding that to the national media, right? When the agent doesn't do that, that means they are no longer an option, because you always want to feed that because it drives up their leverage. The coach is leverage, because now you create a bidding war. You're saying, oh, this team wants you. This team wants you. Well, if you're not mentioned in those, you aren't really ever an option. And they weren't. Reports came out and said the Bears weren't an option after it happened, right? He was going to Chargers no matter what. So we're normally in that type of situation where it's like, we don't get option one. And then option two, we're like, who? Like, it's not like there's a clear cut option two. It's basically like, we didn't get our guy. And now we kind of have to sit back and go, well, I guess we'll take whatever. And then we get someone like a Matt Eberflus, right? And then we have to sell ourselves on that and be like, a new guy, but we'll get behind it, blah, 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 blah. That's what we always have to do. This is the first time in a long, long time, right, that we've had the number one candidate being one of our top options and the number two candidate being also a top option when it comes to, like, basically there's three, I'd say, tier one options: Vrabel, Ben Johnson, and Mike McCarthy. And we basically are in the competition for 2 out of the 3, which has never been the case for Chicago, because they never had the quarterback, or the roster didn't line up, or the team just completely sucked previously, which makes sense why their head coach is fired. So I say all that to be like, this is unprecedented territory for this team. And I think if we don't get one, we will still be so much improved with our second option, whether it's a safety net or not. So, which is crazy. Like you said luck. It might be that, but they finally have an opportunity to really get someone who can do something.
Yeah, Mike McCarthy's floor is really high. I think also when it comes to Caleb, is he going to be the guy that Caleb said, he wants to be with for 15 years? I'm not sure. He was with Rodgers for a while.
He's 61, so
yeah. But can we get a good 5 to 8 years out of him?
Oh, easily.
They have tons of success, and and then they're lined up for maybe someone to follow in his footsteps and keep it going. But at least for the short term, I think it would be a good hire. We had him in our elite tier, which is, like I said, I think Bears fans, if they do go this route, I think most people will be happy about a week or two after, if not right away. I know there's a lot of Bears fans that will be ecstatic, but at the same time, I know there's some skeptical people. But I think after a while, when you start to think about it and what he's going to be able to bring instantly, there's no question marks outside of, maybe can he win the Super Bowl? Right? Can he actually do that? Because there's no question he's going to be able to build this team and make them more competent. So, but yeah, let's just get to the playoffs first. So anyways, let's go ahead and get to our shout outs here. and then we'll go ahead and
Yep,
wrap up
let's
the
do
show.
that.
Sound good,
So
Vic?
we also had one voicemail coming from Jed, so we appreciate that. We're going to play that as well. And just a little reminder here, as you can see here on the orange bar at the bottom, we have a voicemail line at speakpipe.com/the BFR podcast. You can leave a voicemail throughout the offseason at any time about any topic, questions you have for us, yada, yada. If you just want to shoot the shit, whatever it is, we like to play all our voicemails on here. Just obviously don't make it something that gets you canceled, because obviously we'll cut those off. But it is a voice line that's always open. We love to hear you guys' thoughts, opinions, questions you may have. So we do have one that came in from Jed today, so we will check that out. But before we do that, first off, some breaking news. Not like crazy, actually, at all. But OG of the chat, Vizzo Joe here said, per Brad Biggs, Bears parted way with their analytics director. Thank God. True, because looking at analytical decisions they made, it did not work this past offseason. I don't know how long he's been the analytical director for the team, but that seems like that's probably a positive. Okay, and then some quick questions are going to roll off here real quick, and then we'll get to the shout-outs. Would you hear from Brady? Would you guys rather have fired Poles to ensure Ben Johnson handpicks his GM like the Raiders job, or keep Poles and risk losing Ben in favor of Mike? That's a pretty good one. I'm probably going to go with the latter.
I'm not going to let a guy that has never been a head coach make those type of implications or decisions.
Yeah. So. Yeah, it's too much risk. You're taking unknown with unknown, and that's how it normally works, but I don't know. At least we know Ryan Poles can do enough, right? So I'd probably go the latter. And then here, Alex Hamilton, OG of the show, says, did anyone heard anything about Kevin O'Connell? He just lost, and Vikings never extended. So isn't he a free agent? Yes, that is correct. The Vikings would be dumb as hell to not extend him. I don't think we have a chance in hell of getting him. Dave, if you disagree, let me know. But
no, I mean, we haven't heard anything. So, I mean, if there's going to be any noise, it has to come out soon, because this coaching cycle is already on its way. So
correct. And then again here from Alex said, is there any steam behind Ben going to the Raiders and taking Hendon Hooker with him as his QB? I believe Chef said this. I think it was Ian Rappaport that said that, but someone did say it. You might be right, Alex. It may have been Shefty, but still, like, that's your option, going to the Raiders and you drafting Tennessee quarterback Hendon Hooker. Like, it could work, but you already have Caleb Williams, number 1 overall draft pick. Like, it still doesn't – it's not enough when you're looking at roster construction to say that the Raiders have a better opportunity than the Bears. Again, that pro will always be the Bears side. The other pros, which we talked about, like money, front office, that's going to go to the Raiders. So it all depends on what he wants. Okay, now let's go to the shout-outs here. Thomas Whitty with the hashtag OG Bear Down. McCarthy all day. Intrigued by Johnson, but McCarthy will bring stability and what we need for the coaching staff. Maybe a safe, but we can feel like we can always find the hot new thing. Agree with that here. I'm okay with that. Both great options. Jeremy here with the hashtag Big F and Rod. We appreciate that. The BFR podcast. We love that. And with the hashtag OG. Much love. We got domain expansion here with the hashtag OG. Bears are going to pick someone no one expects. I hope not. I've heard people joke about that, but please no. It's got to be one of these two. There's no way. If it's not Ben Johnson, it's 100% Mike McCarthy. You've never had two great, coaching candidates like this before. So, and then Jeremy said, hashtag OG Ben Johnson or bust. Feel you on that. Mr. James, OG of the show, said, give me Flores. Dude puts up winning above all else. Can't be bought and tough as nails. Definitely that. I think, if we look at the history of the Bears, which we brought up, Dave actually brought this up. The Bears have gone back and forth, defense to offense, defense, offense, defense, offense. So if we look at the trend, they just went defense. Looks like they might go offense. They like to course correct. Does it work out? No, but that's what they do. And then Alex Hamilton here again with the OG said, I was a McCarthy hater until I realized how closely his resume was to Tomlin's. I don't know if the Bears are in position to hire a brand new coach to bring me McCarthy. Like that take. And then we got Stark here, Stark Music, hashtag OG. Mike McCarthy is the past. Ben Johnson is the future. That's a good way to frame it. Definitely age-wise. If you guys watched our watched our coach tier list last week, I'm definitely an ageist. So if you're looking at the age aspect, yes, Ben Johnson definitely wins in that category. Then we got Christopher Carlson, hashtag Ben Johnson first choice, Mike McCarthy second choice. I like them both, but Ben is new ideas. Mike McCarthy has been around a while, predictable. That is very understandable. Let me see. We got some more here. We got insane N-word with MS. Sorry, I can't say it on the show, but hashtag first time listener. Smiley, appreciate that. Insane. And then we have Plastic Rockets here. Hashtag OG, bear down, LFG, and a BFR. Appreciate that. Plank here. I know he's an OG with the MC Fact Bear Down. And then we have, let's see if we got anything else. We do not, but great list of people. We appreciate that. Any final things, Dave, before we get to this voicemail?
Nope. Let's get to it.
Absolutely. Again, appreciate all of you. If you want to get some quick ones into the OG, we'll maybe get or OG or a new face, get them in during this voicemail, and then we'll get them before the end of the show before we close out here. But let's go to our one voicemail this week from Jed in the offseason. Have no idea what this is about, but I'm excited to find out. Here we go, Jed.
Hey guys, what's up? It's Jed Stark, aka Stark Music. Once again, just want to say thank you for all you guys have done this season and covering the Bears. I guess my only thoughts tonight are really respectfully, fuck Mike McCarthy. I mean, I don't want this man as our head coach. I'm sorry. I feel like the most popular defense that I see is, he's underrated, or, he's like I think the funniest one I saw was he's white Mike Tomlin with overweight Mike Tomlin with bad PR or something. So I don't know. That said, you look at Mike Tomlin in the playoffs, for example, a few days ago, consistently, even the last, a few years ago against the Browns, I think they got destroyed. I don't know, man. I don't want a Mike Tomlin. I want new blood. I want someone who's going to grow along with Caleb. Even if it's a little bumpy, with Ben Johnson being a first-time head coach, he needs to be the guy. So, if we hire McCarthy, I'm not going to lie, I'm going to be pretty disappointed. And I feel like if it doesn't work out, then Caleb's going to be out after his rookie contract. So, and if that happens, honestly, I'm probably going to be done with the Bears, at least to follow closely. So, I don't know. We'll see what happens. So, anyways, you guys have a great night, and yeah.
Hell yeah. Appreciate that. It's good stuff. I agree.
Just to give a shout out, here is Stark Music. So I'm pretty sure that was him. So appreciate the voicemail on that. But yeah, you know what? That's a good point. Fresh blood, someone that can build with Caleb. I know I know Ben Johnson's 38. McCarthy's 61. Oh, sorry about that. McCarthy is 61. So obviously there's a giant age gap there. And, are you hoping there's a risk? Are you taking a McVay, someone young who can build up with his quarterback, or is this going to be another Matt Nagy situation? It isn't the worst head coach option for the Bears ever, but that's kind of, again, it's a lot of risk, and you just don't know. You just never know.
We'll see. Anyways, we'll be back Saturday morning to kind of have a special morning podcast with y'all. So we appreciate the support. If you want Ben Johnson, hit that like button. If you want Mike McCarthy, also hit that like button. And we'll see you Saturday. Bear down.
Peace.